going to use like a little slide presentation for. And I would love to tell you, oh, I made this slide presentation just for today, but I didn't. That's why I have a slide presentation for it. This has been kind of a passion project of mine for the last few years, is that idea of helping our readers or getting our readers matched to books in big and important and purposeful ways. And so to have 20 minutes of time to share some of the passion that I have for that with you is really exciting to me. And it's something that I started with just a couple of colleagues of mine, like really thinking about what do we mean when we say match kids to books? And then from that little idea grew just all kinds of questioning of our own practices. And so I want to share just a little bit of that with each of you today. I have this little PowerPoint. Some parts of it might not fit perfectly, and if so, you're just going to have to understand that I will skip right past it and go from there. So I want to talk, or I want to share with you just a few thoughts to put out in the your universe and think about them. I am not expecting by the end of this 20 minutes together that you will walk away saying, well, step one, I'll do this. Step two, I'll do that. Step three, I'll do this. And I hope that there's something inside of this 20 minutes that gets you to think a little bit about who your readers are and how you and I, can have a role in getting them matched to texts, right? Like at the end of the day, let's be absolutely clear. At the end of the day, we have very little control in forcing someone to do something. Very little control. We might believe we have it. We might be, fooled into saying, oh, no, like I got that person to do that. But at the root of everything is like that self-will, that self-initiative to do it. And I think when we are thinking about being the kind of teachers who say, I want my kids to be matched to books, we have to think in big, important ways. Like, what are the roles that we can play to help get kids matched to books? If it was easy, everybody would be matched to books. And I know in my own classroom life, in my own coaching life, in my own literacy consulting life that I've been doing this last couple of years, in my work at the Reading and Writing Project, and the hundreds of classrooms I've been in, it is not always, not even common, that kids are matched to books in big and powerful ways. So let's just talk a little bit about it. So one of my favorite people to listen to is Kylene Beers and her passion for reading and readers. And I have a quote from Kylene that I always keep in my mind, which is, when I am playing the role as an advocate, an ally, a co-conspirator in getting kids matched to books, my job is not to think first about level of text complexity, but first to think about child and think about what does that child like? Not even necessarily what they like in a book or in a topic. Are they a story reader? Are they an information reader? Are they a poetry reader? Are they a graphic novel reader? But more like, what is that child like? Who are they in a day, not in Reader's Workshop, but who are they? Are they the kind of person that at recess they run and they find every single, piece of equipment to play on? Or are they the kind of person that chooses the piece of equipment to play on that day? Are they the kind of person that organizes a game for other people to play with them? Or are they the kind of person that kind of takes stock of what games are being organized and then runs to that place to join that game? Who are they outside of classroom? What do you like and what are you like? Because once I, as the teacher, have an understanding of that, I can start to think about helping kids choose books that match who they are. And I can also start to do the big work of introducing introducing books, and sometimes it's called like book blessing books with those parts of the reader in mind, right? So when I sit down next to that reader and I have my little stack of books beside me and I know who they are, what they're like, and what they like, that might be a big part of the kind of books that I bring over. Am I bringing over books that are about characters who just moved to a new school or to a new town, and they are trying to fit in or figure out like who are their friends and who aren't their friends? Are they character, or am I bringing over books that have all kinds of working parts and pieces to them? Because what the child is like and what the child likes is probably where I'm going to go to first. So, and then I think about what is the current state of my classroom library? I put this picture up not as a picture for anyone to say, "Ooh, look at all her books," or "Wow, look how organized Selena's classroom library was." I put this picture up almost as I'm not ashamed of it, but I've definitely rethought. This is a book. This is my classroom library from probably, I don't know, 2004, 2003, 2004, when I was teaching um, fourth grade, and this was my leveled library. It's not my whole library, but a part of my leveled library, and that was what the current state was. And you know, if you look across those levels, and if you or I were to kind of finger through those baskets, I imagine you could imagine all of the different reading identities that are hidden or cloaked inside of those baskets. The labels on the pen, I have identified readers as a level, or trying to say, oh, here's where you're allowed to choose from. Now I've done some things like made really nice big um juicy levels, right? If you look like, goes pretty much clear across a whole shelf. But the labels are not really reflective of who my readers are, what my readers like. Whereas when I look at some classroom libraries that are, you know, um, purposefully put together in ways that help kids with identity and choosing books in ways that support who they are. My classroom library probably needed a serious facelift, right? Like, how am I organizing them in ways so that both the kinds of books that might support them is represented, and then some of those different identities or aspects of ourselves that we see in books, the books that work like mirrors for us, the books that work like windows for us, how are those being represented? So this is not my classroom library. This is the classroom library I wish I'd had, where you can see how the teacher has, a little leveled shelf where she's got like her little leveled text, and then she's got some books that are organized in ways that the kids have engaged inside of it, so that she's got like her Fly Guy books. Fly Guy books tap out around that level of text complexity, but now like find all of those books there, and now, oh, here's my shelf that helps me, and then here are some identities, right? Here are some ways that I might match some books myself as a reader. You can see that the teacher's done some work with, she's taken the initiative to not think about shoving so many books into one basket, but you can see how she's spread it out and said, where books mean kids can kind of like move through those books and make some more purposeful, meaningful choices. She's also employed the kids in doing some of that sorting of the books. Here are friends and enemy books, and here are books that are going to make you laugh out loud. And again, they're still organized in ways that are organized and put together, but they are more child or reading centered, as opposed to the level that you're at. What, how am I getting you matched in that way? And I think that that's one thing, if you were to study your own classroom library right now, Um, it isn't an either or decision. It isn't that we have to live in this world of extremes and say, well, I got rid of every level of text in my classroom and kind of put it together because I didn't want children to identify as a level of text, or, everything is level because I want to make sure that kids can book shop with the most ease and automaticity. So I want them to be able to go to do that. It might not be an either or, it should be a both and, right? Like I often use that a little analogy of like the shoe store and how a shoe store is organized. I think about that with my classroom library when it comes to matching books to readers. I know I need to go to like the area of the shoe store where I find my size. Like I'm a size 8. So I like look down and I find the size 8, and there are usually 2 or 3 rows for size 8. And then, as I look through, I know there's like a tennis shoe section, and then there's like the heel section. You probably have already guessed I shop at Nordstrom Rack for lots of my shoes. But anyway, but like, it's still grouped together, but I've got opportunity to see like what identity as a shoe shopper am I going for, right? Like what kind of shopping am I doing? It's not just all by 8. That said, they're organized in 8s because those are the shoes that fit. In my classroom library, I probably want to have some kind of system, some kind of organization so that kids can get to books that fit or that match what they can practice reading. Right? Richard Allington says it's so critical that when we give kids practice time in reading, and I don't know about you, but I try to give kids practice time in reading every day, right? I try to give them practice time. Then it's important that what they're practicing fits. So I want them to be able to get and access those parts of the library, and I want them to have interest and engagement inside of those parts of the library. And, in order to do that, I think about both of those ways. And it can be from my very early readers all the way to my most sophisticated or complex, readers. And so I think so much about, getting kids matched to books comes quite honestly in how is the environment in which kids are shopping for books organized. And that's something that I critically look at and continue to evolve as a reading teacher, is what does that really look like? And so as I put that in my mind, right, like the organization of it, I start to create a vision for it, for that work. And I think about, there are from Ragathan, they talk about the 5 laws of library science, which if you're interested in libraries and library science, which think about how old the institution of library is. And I don't know about you, but I am still a big library shopper and supporter, right? If they've been around for a long time, like any kind of system that continues to thrive and work, what are the laws of library science? And I think, when I'm creating my own classroom library, I keep those laws kind of in my mind, in my thoughts. So I think about like, one is that books are for use, right? So if they are so packed in tight, and if they are so put together that they cannot be used, then the truth is they will not be used. I think about the law that every reader is looking for or is on the lookout for his book. So I keep that law of library and of library science in mind. If a reader is on the lookout for his book or the book where that identity lies, I have to have it in an organized way. I have to have it organized in a way or put in such a way that they can find that. And every book, the inverse of that is every book has its reader, right? So like that's where I start to think about, oh yeah, inside of libraries, when I visited Dublin, I visited that really famous library at the University of Dublin, and so old, and like every book, and some of them are hundreds and hundreds of years old, they're organized in such a way so that its reader can find it. Library science, a law of library science, is organized in such a way that it saves time for the reader, right? And so I think about, how am I doing some organization or making sure that kids get matched to books in ways that save time for that reader. I'm not trying to rush anybody, but I am saying, oh, this part of my classroom, this library is for the children. How am I making it so that I'm saving some time? That's where the idea of, how am I putting books together? Um, there might be opportunities where I might have a leveled shelf, or I might have a leveled shelf and then some books, whether they are series or types of books or topics that are the same, that go inside of there. And then the last law of library science is, the library is a growing organism. I think that's something that is so important for you and I to remember, because often in my own personal practice, while a few new books might have gone in based on the money I got, or the text I received, the idea that it was a growing organism never really stuck with me. I never thought about, Carnegie Public Library, where I shopped as a kid, is each time kind of growing and being an organism, not just like a static thing. So I constantly look out and think about, in my own library, like, how is it continuing to grow? How is it continuing to attract? How is it continuing to invite and engage people to use it? One of my very dear friends just published a memoir called Somebody's Daughter. Her name is Ashley Seaford. If you had, her book just came out on the 1st of June. And I, of course, got on my library app to see when I could get it. And June 1st, 14-week wait for that book, right? Because it's growing, and the people that use the library are growing. All of the people are kind of on the lookout for, like, where is that new text, and how can I get access to it, and how can I do it? We want to think about that in our own classroom libraries too. How is our classroom library working like a growing organism? So we want to continue to think about that in our own practices as well. When I think about skip through to this third idea of getting kids matched to books, because I talked a little bit about phase one, like that, thinking about like what do our current libraries look like, to thinking about those laws of library science, and then 3, kind of rolling our sleeves up to get messy. And I want to just encourage you to think about, you know, there's a librarian. Her name is Belinda Boone, and she works at the Texas State Library, and she talks about the importance of weeding out your library, because they are growing organisms. And she uses this little, like, musty, I don't know what is that called, right? MUSTIE. It's called a
Acronym?
yeah, it's like same thing as scuba, right? But she says, as we go through, are there titles or texts that are misleading, right? Old science, old geography, old, irrelevant, ugly. Is a book well loved, or was it born ugly? Like, how are we making that? How are we weeding it out? So if it was born that way, can we, if children have enjoyed it, can they make a new cover for it? Or is it not, worthy of being inside of that class library? Is it Has it been superseded? Is there a newer version of it, or a better book on that topic? So if I'm reading about dinosaurs, which I know a lot of my kids love to read about dinosaurs, do I have newest information on it? Or am I still reading dinosaurs books that, like, I read in 1980 in my, third grade classroom, or my fourth grade classroom? Whereas now we know that dinosaurs probably had feathers. Dinosaurs probably were much more like birds, so thinking about that kind of work. Is is there anything in my library that I'm thinking about that is kind of trivial, small, belongs to like an old fad or something that's past. The examples that I will use is, I taught in my own classroom in the late 90s and early 2000s, and I had books on Beanie Babies. That's funny. You are absolutely allowed to laugh at that because it was pretty funny. Or things like that. Is there something that I can think about that is irrelevant, right? Does it match or meet the needs of my community? Is it too hard? Is it too easy? Really hard nonfiction, not that it can't be engaging and interesting, but if there is not more to go with it often is not, a place for my classroom library. And then I think about like elsewhere, right? Are there books that I have in my classroom that it's not the only source of the books in my library? Could it be that it then moves into technology, it moves into content area work? So I wanted to kind of go through those three phases of really thinking about matching books to readers that are ways that go beyond that idea of, oh, a reader, it uses this level of text. I make sure they have 10 of those levels of text in their baggie to do that work. We just kind of started with really getting to know what the child is like and what the child likes. Then thinking about, once we know that information, how are we organizing the space in our classrooms to support that child, children, and then getting a little bit messy, like pulling some of those baskets out or those bins out and making some decisions, or using that little musty anagram if you need to. All right, I'm over time. I'm so sorry. It was really nice to hang out with you a little bit. I hope you have a good rest of the conference and day, and I hope to see you. Take care. Bye bye. Thanks for